Obviously, without telling stories yourself, have you actually read some reports where you're like, oh my God?
It's like, I'm not a shockable person. I'm not like, because like I say, I've fostered and I've lived life, and so I'm not a shockable person, but it's one of those ones when I was reading them, you know, me and my husband were sitting when we were deciding what child to look into adopting. We were sitting there with a glass of wine and I was crying. It's so... do you know what it is? It shows you the depths of human depravity, the depths of like what people go through. And that's why I said to you before that I don't want to be out here just like throwing birth parents under the bus, even though some of the things are terrible, because you get to find out the things that happened to them that led them to the point. And you think to yourself, if I was abused in that way, or I was treated in that way, or... So I'll give you something as well. So when you're fostering, you find that a lot of the children, a lot of the parents of the children that you're fostering, they were children in the same local authority fostered themselves. So I'd have social workers saying to me, "Oh, is that so-and-so's mum? I was a social worker when she was 12. Do you see what I mean? So the cycle just continues.
It does.
And the other thing a lot of people, if they aren't aware of, is that in any local authority, say for example, you have like 500 children who are being fostered, they come from a very small amount of families. So, you know, like where you have the police say, well, there's loads of burglaries happening, but it'll only be about a handful of burglars who are doing those robberies. Same thing in foster care, that it's a very small amount of families that are having the children that they're neglecting. So they'll each have like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children each. So it's very localised to a small demographic of families in each area that are having these issues.
As you're a human being as well, have you ever read a report and you're just like, you know what, this is a bit too much for me to take on? Like, 'cause everyone has their boundaries. Like, for example, you're out dating, I might look at a single mum and say, oh, she's amazing, she's great, but she has a child, I just can't bother. Just because I'm a human and I don't have to, so I'm just not going to bother.
So when you go through the adoption process, you literally it's very analytical. They have a list of all the disabilities and all the things that you will and won't take on, and you literally sit and tick the list off of what you will and won't accept, because they don't want to put a child with you only for you to turn around like a year later or whatever and say, it's too much for me. Mm-hmm. So they'll say, will you accept so if you're black, will you accept a mixed race child? Will you accept a black child? Will you accept a child where the race is unclear? Will you accept a child with Down syndrome? Will you accept a child with, a limb missing? It's very, very analytical.
Crazy.
So that's why the process takes so long, because they really want to delve deep into your...
You don't want to make any mistakes.
Yeah, this is it. And sometimes mistakes are made.
Because we are only human. But
yeah.
Feel free to disclose if you don't. Obviously, this is more personal, so you don't have to. But did you ever have any tick boxes where you're like, actually, I just would rather not deal with this, like yours?
Oh yeah, I mean, we had like loads of different conditions. I didn't want a child, for instance, that was towards their end of life. I couldn't have managed with that.
Yeah, it's hectic.
That for me, that would just be too difficult. So everybody has their things that they can and can't deal with, but also as well, even when you tick boxes saying yes, social workers might think no. So you may think you can deal with something, but after the assessment's done, they might think actually, and it might be something so simple as they don't think your house is like
big enough to
have.
Because like adopted, I don't know if it's still the case now, but like adopted children when I was adopted couldn't share rooms.
You need your own.
So like my parents, I very quickly realised I was one of the only people in my school who was an only child, and the only person in my family who was an only child other than my dad. So I wanted a sibling, and my parents tried so hard to get me one. They had to get another house. When did they try and do this? Just before 2008. So they weren't able to get another house. So they got me a dog instead, which was great. I mean, he was a bit of a yappy little thing, but
Why do adopted kids have to have their own room?
I don't know. I assume it's...
So So it's to do with. So have you ever heard called a trauma bond? Your trauma bond.
Yeah.
So a lot of adopted children suffer from trauma bonds. Like siblings, they suffer from trauma bonds. So if you have, say, interfamily, say, sexual abuse, do you want to put a brother and a sister sibling in the same room together?
Yeah, mad.
So,
I didn't want to have to go there, so I'm glad that you did.
But it could just be simple as not even that deep. Sometimes a lot of children who are adopted have disabilities, autism, those type of, and it's just not feasible for them to share a room. And also as well, if the children aren't related and you've adopted several children, you don't want them necessarily sharing a room. So it's just for safety. And the other thing is as well, what a lot of people don't realise is that you may adopt a child or foster a child that's been sexually abused, but you may not know they've been sexually abused. And you'll be like, how can you not know they've been sexually abused? Well, if they're 2, how would you know what happened to them? They might come into care because they've been neglected, but
you can't know for sure what happened to that child.
You can't know for sure. And also, if that child's been traumatised, you might find out later that that's happened, but you're not necessarily going to know from the start. So it's just a precaution just to keep everybody safe and everybody happy, because next thing you know, someone's done something and then you have to dissolve the placement.
I mean, my adopted parents didn't know everything that had happened to me. I only really found out when I came into contact, and I'm not going to disclose too much information, but a person who basically knew a lot about me managed to find me and fill in a lot of the blanks. And there were a lot of things that I didn't know, that social services didn't know, and that my adopted parents didn't know.
So how did they find? Like they felt that they needed to tell you. Like how did they find you?
They actually had a dream, and something in the dream told them to search for me, and they found me.
Okay.
Really weird, but really cool at the same time.